entering, but it is 11:01, so I am going to begin. Um, Hi, everyone. Welcome. We see you signing in. Thanks for being here today. We're very excited about today's webinar titled Telling the Credit Union Story, and we're delighted to have with us presenters Jessica Maldonado, the Vice President of Public Affairs, and Gracie Bransgard, the Director of Government Affairs, both from PolicyWorks. Jessica and Gracie, thank you for being here today. We are going to look forward to hearing from you in a few minutes. PolicyWorks is based in the Midwest. It was launched with the vision of creating a one-stop advocacy shop for businesses and organizations needing professional lobbying, public affairs, or grassroots assistance, including credit unions. PolicyWorks have been champions of credit unions and are uniquely qualified to help tell our story, and so we knew they would be a great fit for presenting today's important topic about the history and roots of our industry and movement, the work credit unions do in our communities, our impact, and how we need to and can effectively share our story in a largely digital era. And then just to offer a little more background about our presenters, as Vice President of Public Affairs, Jessica leads the public affairs and public relations activities for clients, including media relations, digital strategy, grassroots communication, and more. And as Director of Government Affairs, Gracie works full-time at the Iowa State House during the legislative session, advocating for their clients' interests. She also coordinates grassroots engagement, coalition building, and political action fundraising. So once Jessica and Gracie conclude their presentation, we are going to invite you all to be part of a Q&A with our presenters, and everyone should feel free to participate. Also, Gracie and Jessica are open to you asking questions during the presentation, and the way you would do that was that you can click on your raise hand button that you can find at the bottom of your screen. Once you do that, it requests to unmute, and I can do that very quickly, and you can jump in and participate. The other way is you can send your questions directly through the chat or the Q&A box to me, and I can interrupt on your behalf, or we can just wait until the question and answer session as well. And with that, Jessica and Gracie, I am happy to hand it over to you.
Well, thank you, Erica and Mike. We're so excited to be with you here today, and thank you for that really kind introduction. A little bit more about PolicyWorks, if I can get this to move. There we go. We actually are wholly owned by the Iowa Credit Union League, so we always say they are our favorite and most important client, but we have grown up in the credit union space and we love credit unions. That's the majority of what we spend our time on. But I also wanted to shed a little bit more light on PolicyWorks. We're actually a multi-client government affairs and public relations firm. So we represent a wide variety of organizations all throughout Iowa and even the country. We actually operate in 12 states for one client. But you can see there's some big names on here, and we have really small nonprofit trade associations or even musicians that we've accidentally kind of grown this little book of business on the music side. But I say all that because we've been able to have this experience in a wide variety of industries, and we've been able to use that knowledge, whether it's media relations or social media, from a lot of different clients and topics, to be able to bring that knowledge back to our credit union clients too, because I think there's a lot of not necessarily trial and error, but a lot of experience you can gain by working in different mediums and different industries. You find out what works, what doesn't on social media and other platforms. So just wanted to give a little bit more information about PolicyWorks and some of the broad variety of experience we're able to bring. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Gracie to get started on a little bit of the history and mission of credit unions.
Thanks, Jessica, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking some time to spend with us and talk about the credit union difference and how we share that more broadly. We'd be remiss if we didn't start all the way back at the origin of credit unions and, how credit unions came to North America and to the U.S., particularly because we know that much of this credit union work really started in Massachusetts. I think you guys were the first state to actually pass a state credit union act. So Massachusetts has been at the forefront and really on the front lines of this cooperative financial work. So I wanted to start with two gentlemen who really have been leaders of the credit union movement. Alphonse Desjardins and Edward Filene. These are probably familiar folks to you all, but I think they really illustrate the core philosophy of credit unions and the mission-driven work that we do. As you all are probably familiar, Alphonse Desjardins, I'll start with him, was a Canadian journalist, got to know credit unions through his investigative journalism work on loan sharks and other predatory lenders, saw that consumers in Canada were really being taken advantage of, being charged just really predatory interest rates on loans. And particularly, these were individuals that could hardly pull together, enough change to make the loan itself, and then to top, 1,500% interest on top of that he felt really unjust and really predatory. And so he was one that, helped to start the first credit union in North America, and then came down to the U.S. and helped establish the first credit union in the U.S. in New Hampshire with a group of immigrant mill workers. So again, taking a group of folks who are being left behind in the traditional financial system, bringing them together as a people helping people and creating a credit union around it. And then, as you all know, Edward Filene, who was really instrumental in helping to pass that Massachusetts Credit Union Act, but also, again, worked with folks, identified a problem, and brought people together, again, under that people helping people philosophy, to increase access to financial services and also increase access to affordable financial services in a way that's equitable, but that also empowers those folks that are in the group to take action and to help others. And I wanted, to pause and also encourage you all to think about your own credit union's origin story. What was that group of folks that came together to create the credit union that you are now a part of the leadership of? And my guess, without knowing all of your individual credit union stories, but my guess is that there is that people helping people philosophy really embedded in the creation of your own credit union institution as well. And so we wanted to start out with a slide about the history, just to illustrate that people helping people philosophy that you all are continuing today and that benefits your members today goes back and is really core to who we are and where we came from. And like I said, that people helping people philosophy continues today and actually has some real tangible benefits for members. So we can move to the next slide. This new information, or I should say, this information isn't new to you all. You all know that the credit union difference starts with that structural difference. Credit unions are not-for-profit, they're financial cooperatives, and that leads to a real service difference for your members, because at other for-profit financial institutions, they're constantly having to balance between the needs of their customers and the needs of their shareholders. But at a credit union, as you know, you all never have to make that balance, because at credit unions, those two groups of people are the same. Your customers are your shareholders, your member owners. And so when you are all making decisions about the products and services that you offer, the rates that you charge, you can put the member first, because at the end of the day, they are also your owners. And that structural difference, that credit union difference, has real tangible benefits for not just your members, but for the communities that you serve. And on the next slide, we pulled some data from CUNA, the Credit Union National Association. So this is specific to Massachusetts. I think this data comes from 2021, so it may be a little bit different, but this was what we could find with the National Association, but it still tells an incredible story about how you all are making a difference in the lives of your members and communities. Starting with that number one data point, you saved your members almost $250 million in 2021 versus what they would have paid for those same products and services at another financial institution. You saved them, a significant amount of money in better rates and fewer fees. And then additionally, $2 million paid to members in straight dividends. But then there's also a community impact to this. That's $3.7 billion economic impact from Massachusetts credit unions alone. That $3.4 billion in outstanding business loans, that's not just helping those members. My guess is that a good portion of those loans were probably loans that they couldn't have gotten at another financial institution. So you're not just expanding critical access to credit for those in Massachusetts, but also think of those businesses that would not have started without your involvement and without your lending. That is a real impact on the communities, on the economy. And then, even expanding upwards from the micro level member impact, but thinking about the products and services that you all offer that have a greater impact and help to move the needle on some of these really important societal issues. Things like offering clean energy loan products, offering payday alternative loan products, offering down payment assistance programs, things that really move the needle on environmental sustainability, on affordable housing, issues that are critical to keeping our communities vibrant, both urban and rural. And you all play a really key role in that economic vitality of not just your own individual communities, but the economy in Massachusetts at a greater level. So I wanted to share that people helping people philosophy has just incredible impact on not just your members, but your communities as well. The issue that we have found, though, in our own polling and research is that a large majority of folks, though, don't know that this difference exists. When they think about financial institutions, they lump everyone together. So everyone from the large national banks all the way down to the small credit unions, they're lumping into the same group. So they don't understand that credit unions have a structural difference. They don't understand that you're saving your members millions of dollars in better rates and fewer fees. And they don't understand that mission alignment, mission-driven work of credit unions that is different from other financials. And that's why we're so excited to share this topic with you all about telling the story of credit unions, because you not just have a really great story to tell, but it will also really impact and help your business growth. And if we can go to the next slide, that's the big why of why we encourage you all to tell your credit union story. Jessica will get into this a little bit later in the presentation, but one thing that we know is that younger generations are really attracted to mission-driven organizations. They want to do business with organizations that are committed to the same issues that they care about. And that's what makes it such a good story to tell, because if those younger folks know about the good work that you all are doing, if they know about that people helping people philosophy, they're more likely to join and stay at a credit union. So telling your credit union story is not just, a good feel-good strategy. It's also a really helpful business strategy. It can help attract and retain your members. And then on the other side, there is certainly an advocacy piece to this as well. Starting with that first Credit Union Act that was passed in your state in 1909. Credit unions were created through legislation, they're regulated through legislation, and so it is absolutely critical that your policymakers, both on the state level and the federal level, understand that credit union difference. So when they are going forth and introducing legislation, they are not only aware of the credit union difference, but they can keep that in mind when they're putting together some of this bill language. We've seen too often, especially it seems at the federal level, where regulators will paint with a broad brush and apply the same regulations to all financial institutions, regardless of size, regardless of structure. And we account for much of that as just a lack of awareness about the credit union difference. So today I want to keep those couple of things in mind before I turn it over to Jessica about just the importance of telling your story. It's not just a marketing tool, but it really is a business strategy and also fundamental to making sure that credit unions can continue to be successful and continue to be an option for folks. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jessica to deep dive into some of the strategies that you all can use to better tell your story.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gracie. And I think that slide really illustrates why Gracie and I love to do these presentations together, because that advocacy and that PR marketing strategy are actually so well aligned behind the need to tell your story and why you should do it. So I think that's one thing, that you build that goodwill among people, at the Capitol and in those grass tops leadership circles around your credit union communities, but it also has some benefit to your ROI through that consumer-driven, mission-driven consumer purchasing power. So it's really a win-win for multiple reasons to make sure that your credit union is telling that story. Like Gracie said, I love hearing the stories about how credit unions were actually formed. And those are stories that even as you've grown and adapted throughout the years, you can still double down on that people helping people start that your credit union had. So all of that is so super important. But so now very excited to get into a few ways, 5 ways to help tell your credit union story in the digital era. So here's hopefully a few tips and tricks you could also take away from this presentation as you think about your own credit union story and ways to make sure your team is amplifying it. First of all, social media. I think everybody now understands the importance of it, whether it's good or bad. That's a debate for another day, but it definitely can help influence people both in the world of politics, but also in the world of purchasing power and what consumers do in their consumer behavior. And it's honestly one of the easiest and most cost-effective ways to tell your credit union story. We hear a lot of times from credit unions that struggle with it, though. We know a lot of you have staff members that are wearing multiple hats, especially in a small to medium-sized credit union. You may not have a huge team that's able to dedicate a lot of time to this. So one thing we always try to help make sure people understand is make sure you're focusing your social media efforts to align with kind of your marketing target audience as well. And there's a lot of data out there to help you do that. This is actually a Pew Research study from 2021. I don't think they've come out with the 2022 one yet. I have not been able to find it. But it really tries to show you where are people, even by age, where are they spending the most of their time? And you always hear Facebook is dying. I think after every election, half of the political parties in the country say it's gone and they're leaving. But the fact is we actually haven't seen that mass exodus that people nationally like to try to portray. So at least as of 2021, and I would doubt 2022 looks a whole lot different. Facebook really is still king because there's the largest swath of age demographic using that platform. The other platforms are still equally important. If you're trying to target a younger audience, obviously they might be spending more time on Instagram or even TikTok. We've seen an increase in that. But I think that if you only have a few staff members, you kind of know who your target audience is that you're trying to go after to tell that story or to showcase specific services or products. You're able to maybe target your social media efforts more effectively if you know which platform those people are spending the most time on. So that way you find them wherever they are online. And then the media. This is one I can never stress enough. I know sometimes the media could seem scary or daunting. Sometimes, there's a nervousness about, could a story go wrong? Are they going to share the story I'm trying to tell them? But I really think it's important to think of the media as an ally. There really are a lot of good journalists out there, especially local journalists, that are trying to tell good stories. And so I think it's a great place to use as a megaphone to make sure your credit union story is getting told. And I think credit unions often, you're so busy doing the work, helping members, doing the good things, that you forget there's these little moments that could actually be newsworthy moments. So just thinking about any sort of milestone that you could try to create and leverage into a newsworthy moment. These could be things like branch openings or ribbon cuttings, employee promotions, new hires, innovative projects you're doing, sponsorships in the community, really cool partnerships, almost anything you could think of. We actually had an Iowa credit union talking about how they actually had a young 4-H student come in and wanted to buy a cow, but didn't have money. So they helped underwrite a loan for the student with the help of her parents to purchase a cow for 4-H or to show at the state fair. And I was like, that is newsworthy because a bank wouldn't do that. So even things like that help tell the story that way. And maybe that's through a guest editorial in the local paper. But there's so many unique things that credit unions are doing that banks often don't do. So make sure you kind of keep your ears to the ground to think of those unique ways that your credit union is helping members that would be different than banks, because that's not only helping to tell your story, but also helping to tell that story of that people helping people philosophy that credit unions are living every day. So it's really important. Another example here in Iowa, we work with a very small credit union, and every year they do a kind of a Santa Claus give back to one of the firefighters or police officers that is a member. And it's just normally an internal thing. You know, they invite their family, their branch members to come to a little thing at the branch, but usually it's a really feel good story. It's usually a member that had, you know, some life altering situation happen. So this money is really going to help a family in need. And so they had Santa Claus and a fire truck coming. I was like, this is just made for TV. You know, it's a great visual. And so just, even calling the local news director at one of the local stations and just saying, hey, there's going to be a Santa Claus and a fire truck and this fireman who's, dealt with this really hard stuff all year, and they're going to present him this check from the members. And the TV was like, absolutely, we'll be there. So just things like that, it's not even a broad press release. Sometimes it's just picking up the phone to a single outlet and saying, we have an idea, or this is happening if you're interested in coming to check it out. So again, the goal is really to share these inflection points to help members in the long run, but it helps reinforce both with your members and with the public at large, the importance of that community or the credit union to the communities that you're serving. And again, it could be a broad press release. You could push it out to the whole community you're serving, statewide, trade association. Don't ever forget to put all those credit union trade publications on your media release list as well. Or it could be those one-off. Just pick up the phone and try to call one person, because sometimes that one really great story is better than trying to get a whole bunch of little stories in papers too. So you can do it in a lot of different ways, but I would really encourage you not to forget the media, because they can be a really great ally and they can really help amplify your credit union story. Data and impact. I love data. I always say data tells a story. And so if you're thinking about trying to tell your credit union story, don't forget that importance of data. And media loves data. I have one funny story. Barbara Corcoran, who you probably all know from Shark Tank, I actually heard her speak at an event years ago. And she talked about how she was really struggling to make it in the New York real estate market. She couldn't break through. It's a busy area, very noisy world. How do you become someone important or someone that anyone even knows who they are? And she said she wrote this really silly press release or this story, sent it off to local media. And it was about if Michael Jackson was looking for an apartment in New York City, what are the 5 things he'd look for? She completely made it up. There was no reality to it. She had never talked to Michael Jackson, but it got picked up by all these media outlets, and all of a sudden she was somebody in New York, and the people looked for her for real estate advice. So I think even that's not real data, I guess, but it's still putting together a unique set of 5 tips and tricks. Those are things that the media loves. This example here on the left is a credit union example. Just recently, the Iowa Credit Union Foundation released a new economic impact report based on communities of color in Iowa. And it doesn't even necessarily have new data. They took a lot of census tract data, other local data that people have aggregated, and they really put together this report to do a deep dive into some of that minority, the barriers that minority populations or community of colors are facing in Iowa. And it got a ton of great press coverage too, because nobody had really taken the time to aggregate a lot of that stuff before. And they also paired that with some potential solutions. So it's kind of a baseline, here's the need, here are the challenges faced by these communities, and here are some things we can do. And of course, credit unions are best positioned to really help with these, kind of like Gracie mentioned on that earlier slide about mission-driven opportunities for your credit unions to get more involved in these types of initiatives. So again, don't ever discount the importance of data and how it can tell a story. This could be as simple as looking through your own membership aggregate data. We know member data is really sensitive. But even if you look at the demographics of your membership, maybe even HMDA data, showing that you're doing something really well, maybe you're approving a really high percentage of those minority or low income loans, or or even just taking a deep dive into any sort of data or call report information you have to see what story is that data telling, because that could be a newsworthy moment, or those are things you could share on social media in an aggregate sense, obviously not to share any personal identifiable information. But don't forget the importance of that data and the story it tells. Paid advertising in the digital world, unfortunately, it's a very noisy world and it's getting even more fragmented. So sometimes, as much as you can do organically on social media is also very important. Sometimes you have to put a little bit of money behind things because it is a very noisy world. This is a little slide that kind of shows, and this is actually a recent one, so this should be fairly current, but this shows daily media consumption in the United States. I guess it's as of third quarter of 2022, so not quite 2023 yet. But if you see, the majority of people are spending the most time on the internet. So again, when you're thinking about where do I target my efforts, where do I put my ad dollars, people are spending the most time on the internet. And so when you're thinking about putting paid money behind stuff, you want to find those potential members or your current members to retain them wherever they are. And so right now, a lot of them are on the internet, and that could be a lot of places. That could be social media, that could be scrolling YouTube videos. So it's sometimes hard to dissect where to go, and that's where some of that other data showing platform by age or demographic can help you fine tune where to find those people on the internet. Second, there is still TV. So TV still is a very important source of media use for average consumers in America. The trick there is that it's getting harder to find them because you have more people cutting the cord, less traditional broadcast cable or satellite, and more streaming. OTT, or over-the-top television, is an emerging good option, but you also want to make sure you find a really good media vendor that's going to be honest about what you're getting, because you don't want to accidentally buy a lot of skippable videos on YouTube. If you're trying to do OTT and stream to those TVs that people are still sitting in their home and watching, you're going to want to make sure you're on the correct platforms and not being wasting money in a different platform. So it is a little bit harder. It takes a little bit more effort to try to figure out where those people are on TV, because there's so many more options now. It used to just be, dish, satellite, or broadcast or cable. And now you have a lot of options, and some of them are walled off options, like YouTube TV. For the most part, you have to buy directly through YouTube TV. Whereas some of the other ones, you could be on multiple platforms if you go through OTT with one vendor. So it's a little bit harder, but again, find a trusted media vendor that can help you target those buys and make sure you're actually getting what you want to get out of that OTT media buy. The third one there, social media. Again, I think that still kind of goes with that internet. That's where a lot of people are spending their time. So ad buys go really far on social media. A little bit of money goes a long way, and it's a really important way to reach people as well. I won't go through all the little ones, but you'll see toward the bottom, broadcast radio. People are only spending about an hour. I'm assuming that's probably drive time, morning or afternoon. So if you're still doing radio, it's really going to, be beneficial to try to figure out, if somebody's only listening for an hour, what hour of the day is that? Is that the morning drive time when they tune into the station? So really trying to help fine tune where you spend those ad dollars so you can be the most effective and see the best ROI for your money. A little bit about generational messaging. I think this has shifted, luckily, a little bit in the past couple of years, but for years, we only ever heard people talking about marketing to millennials, how they wanted to increase the millennial, portion of their membership, but they actually, in their mind, probably had a different image of what a millennial was, because millennials have grown up, they have kids, they're working adults, they're probably even buying their second home by now. So if you're thinking millennial, but in your head you're thinking, a really young person, you're probably more trying to target Gen Z. So those are the ones born after 1995. They've grown up completely surrounded by technology and traditional marketing efforts, and traditional marketing efforts are pretty useless. Like if you're trying to target Gen Z, they probably have no cable or broadcast or satellite TV subscription. A lot of them don't even have YouTube TV. They're solely streaming things on free or other membership-based platforms, but they live online. So they're a little bit trickier to find. But again, you can leverage that data to figure out where they are spending time, if those are the folks you want to go after. And there's also a really interesting statistic for Gen Z that their attention span is so short. And I don't mean that in a negative way. They're just used to so much content coming at them that it has to be a big picture with 5 words or less, or they're literally not even going to read it. So if you're trying to market to them on social media and tell your credit union story, you're going to have to really get creative about making sure it's really visual and it's super digestible for somebody that's going to scroll through pretty fast. So you need big picture and few words. And this is my most favorite part. When you're trying to tell your story online or in whatever medium, before it used to be about telling the cost, but really now it's about telling and selling the why. And this is just one example I picked. Ford, if you would look at Ford truck advertisements from way back in the day, you're going to see a lot of things about how it was a low cost option. It was affordable. It was the family car, which was still very important, but it was really getting at cost. You know, you should buy the Ford because it's the lowest cost option. And I think that has shifted a lot back to that consumer driven need to be able to, you know, use their purchasing power to feel like they're doing something good or aligning with something important. So we do know consumers still want the lowest rate. Rates are obviously still very important, but it's also important to sell the why behind it. So if you look at more of the Ford truck advertising these days, it's more about American made, like you're buying an American made product, you're helping, you know, the auto workers. I mean, they really in their advertising, if you've seen their Super Bowl ads or anything else, they're really selling the why. There's nothing about cost. There's nothing about anything else. They're really digging deep and trying to sell the why. And so for credit unions, you know, it's talking about, maybe you're talking about, you know, home ownership. And it's not just about the great rates, but it's about making that dream of a home ownership become a reality for someone. So you're selling that dream, or you're selling small business dreams, like Gracie mentioned, helping to prop up Main Street communities by supporting those small businesses. So again, you have great rates to offer them, low fees, and all the things that make a credit union great, but also make sure to weave in that why on why the credit union is the best option to help them. And just one example of somebody that always does this well is Nike. I mean, if you see Nike, they're never going to sell you a pair of Air Jordans because they're the cheapest shoe option, because we all know they're not. But they do a great job. They use a big picture and few words, and that's exactly what is needed to be most effective to cut through the noise. But again, you know, I don't even know what in this picture they're trying to sell for sure, but it's a great image, and it makes people say, I need to go to Nike to, you know, buy my shoes or my racket. So I think Nike's always been a great example of selling the why instead of a cost or a bunch of numbers. And turning employees into advocates. I might turn this over to Gracie to talk a little bit about this, because she's a great advocacy expert.
Thanks, Jessica. Like Jessica said, another place where you can tell your credit union story is through your staff. So we also want to encourage you all to think about ways to empower your staff to be advocates for you. We always talk about this example. So much of marketing happens via word of mouth. So, you know, outside of your ads, outside of anything that the credit union is doing specifically, so much of marketing happens between individuals via word of mouth. We always talk about this example. If you've ever seen on Facebook, someone makes a post and says, hey, you know, I'm thinking about getting a new phone. Should I go with an iPhone or an Android? And then the comments light up underneath with everyone giving their thoughts and their recommendations, like, oh, you should get an Android because this, and this. You should get an iPhone because of this, and this. None of that was paid for by, you know, either phone company, but that marketing and that brand advocacy is happening from consumers. And so we want you to also think about ways that you can empower your staff to be those brand advocates. I can't tell you how many times I've also seen my own Facebook friends post about, you know, wanting to switch to a new financial institution and looking for recommendations. So set your staff up for success to take advantage of those opportunities, to take advantage of some of those individual conversations. So, you know, there are some things that you can do internally. You know, make sure that your staff feel comfortable talking about your credit union. You know, do your employees know about your credit union's origin story? Are you sharing member stories at staff meetings that they can then go and share more broadly? Do they know about, community initiatives that you're taking that then move the needle on those issues that Gen Z and other consumers care about? And then secondly, also think about ways to create opportunities for your employees to be out and present in the community. So are there local chamber events? And maybe you are used to attending those chamber events, but can you bring along some additional staff members? Are there local boards and commissions that your staff can and should apply to and serve on? We had one credit union in Iowa, I'll give another story, and one of their call center employees was really interested in transportation because in their smaller town of Dubuque, Iowa, they didn't have a car and relied on public transit to get to and from the credit union. And so they became really passionate about that issue. And the credit union actually helped them apply and become one of the transportation commissioners in Dubuque. And they've been able to use that position not just to advocate for public transportation in their city, but also to talk about ways that the credit union was supporting them. So it's just another opportunity to not only do good in the community, but also to weave in the credit union story and help become the face of your financial institution. So think about ways that you can empower your staff and not just your executive teams, but all the way down to your frontline staff. To be able, make sure that they're comfortable telling the credit union story and really set them up for success because they can be your strongest brand advocate.
Thanks, Gracie. Let's see here. And that was actually the end of the official remarks. So we wanted to open it up for questions. We hope you have some and would love to keep the conversation going.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jessica and Gracie. Yeah, we did have a few questions come in. The first one is, are millennials and Gen Z customers interested in things like free financial courses or topics like and attending in-person seminars? Do these things even matter anymore?
Do you want to take that, Gracie, or do you want me to?
We can tag team it. So I guess my initial response is yes. We see younger generations, especially financial literacy and helping them navigate some of those complexities of the financial system that maybe don't get covered in a high school financial literacy course. Being able to position your credit union as a reliable source of information, I think that's one thing that we've seen in the rise of social media and online news is that there is so much misinformation or so much inequity in access to information that if you can position your credit union as being a reliable and accessible source for some of those questions, that can be really, really appealing to younger generations. I think I might I don't know if caution is the right word, but when you talk about in-person seminars, I think that is one thing that we're seeing folks in those younger generations trend away from. So maybe think about offering virtual resources, whether that's a virtual meeting or some type of online resource that they can access versus asking them to come in person in a branch. Jessica, what else do you have to add to that one?
Yep, I would completely agree. I was going to mention the in-person versus virtual. I think they're so used to being able to conduct so much of their life online that the idea of going somewhere in person can be a little daunting. But I think those resources are very valuable if they can find them in a digital way.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Like you said, you have a whole generation that's grown up on, doing everything digitally. So, yeah, that's a good point. Another question, marketing remains a big challenge, especially for small credit unions that lack the scale or budget to maintain a digital or physical presence similar to larger credit union institutions. what are resources small credit unions can use?
Absolutely. I know CUNA does send out for specific events or milestones. They do usually have social media kits that are things that credit unions can leverage. But the other thing I would suggest is just to start small. You know, I think it can seem daunting because people might think they need to post every day or multiple times a day. And if you could even just get a general cadence of 2 to 3 times a week, and even just, you know, tell your credit union story through your roots and the, you know, honing in on that cooperative structure and that people helping people philosophy. I think if you could try to start small and not feel like you have to go big all the time, just a modest cadence of content on social media can go a long way. And that also helps your algorithm too, because the ever-changing algorithm also gets hard to beat with organic content on social media. So just making sure you have a cadence will help with your algorithm. And then even just putting a little bit of money behind it. Sometimes you get bumped down in the algorithm if you're not, if people aren't engaging with your content as much. So you could even just use one of those posts and run an ad, even just to your own Facebook page followers, and just getting them to see and engage with that content can help bump it back up so that they see your content more often again. So, and I'm talking like $50, like you wouldn't even have to go big. So again, knowing, you know, budgets might be tight or staff time is tight, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You could just even run one of your organic posts as an ad just to make sure people that follow your page are actually seeing it. But I guess my best advice would be not to try to, you know, bite off too much at once. Just try to find a modest, you know, pace of posting that your team can keep up with.
So a question came in regards to what you were just answering, saying, so are there specialized marketing personnel credit unions should be looking for when hiring? Meaning, is the standard marketing degree enough nowadays, or should credit unions just look to outsource their marketing efforts to large firms?
That's a great question. And I think, you know, that's probably a decision each credit union may want to make. And it depends on marketing, you know, kind of the I guess the level of marketing person you're trying to get, because there might be a really high level marketing person that's really good at the media stuff but maybe hasn't been staying up to date on trends in social media. So sometimes outsourcing could be the most cost effective because you might be able to find a group that can help cover all those bases and works in it actively. But we also definitely understand the value of having an internal person that's living and breathing your credit union story every day too. So I think it could be an either or. I know the last time we hired somebody for our job or our company, like I literally put TikTok in the job description and the HR people thought I was crazy, but I was like, that's what we need, somebody that's a little better in that than me. And so we got that person, which was great. But so I do think the marketing job description is a little bit fluctuating all the time because somebody that's really great at social media may not have any idea how to write or distribute a press release. So I think it's trying to figure out what kind of person you're looking for and what those needs are. And if you could find that unicorn that can do all those things, which they definitely do exist, they might cost a little bit more than that entry level person. Or, you know, is outsourcing more cost effective for what all the tasks you're needing to have done.
Okay, and then I'm going to jump back to an earlier question. There's a lot of discussion about delivering personalization and personalized digital experiences to our customers. Can you talk more about that?
Absolutely. In the form, I don't know if there's a way to clarify that, if that's in the form of personal stories. And if so, then yes, we always preach about the importance of those personal stories and testimonials. So if you do hear of a member that had a great story, that's always the best form of storytelling, is to have it come straight from the person that was helped or impacted. We in Iowa, actually for the Iowa Credit Union League, the last couple of years have actually done a video tour, and we've had credit unions help us identify some really feel good stories from around the state for small business owners, or, you know, single mom that was able to get a home, or a lot of different types of stories. And we actually traveled around the state, got them all on camera, and we've actually been using those as commercials for the Iowa Credit Union League. So I do think those first person testimonials and first person stories are incredibly impactful. And also those kind of things also do really well on social media if you highlight employees or board members or have graphics or videos with actual people in them, they always perform better than if you have just a graphic with a stock photo or something in it, because also they share it, their friends and family may share it. So you have additional organic reach from that. But absolutely, storytelling through personalization is very important. So I hope that's answering the question in the way that it was intended. But I would always say the more you can personalize things, the better.
Yeah, they haven't responded back, so I think you must have answered the question. But yeah, there does seem to be the greatest opportunity with, there's just so many digital platforms, and I know, our credit union members have expressed that it does feel overwhelming at times because there's just so many avenues to go to. But personalization does seem to be the best way to start, instead of the kind of generic messages coming from the credit union, more personalized. So yeah, and if there are any other questions, this is the time to jump in. I don't see anyone else. Let me just check. Yeah, so Jessica and Gracie, thanks so much for being here today. It was a great presentation. We're so appreciative of your insight and your time. Again, certainly so much for us all to consider, as far as how credit unions have so much opportunity to get our message out, utilizing digital messaging and the story, the impacts of the credit union story. So thank you for giving us your insight on that. To all attendees, the recording of today's webinar will be available soon, and I'll let you know as soon as that is ready. And as far as our schedule, we have 2 more webinars scheduled in June. On Tuesday, June 13th at 11, there's going to be a rebroadcast of the Managing Contagion and Building Consumer Confidence webinar that we did. That was following the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank. So we will rebroadcast. There has been a demand for that. And then on June 22nd, that's Thursday at 11, we're going to broadcast the keynote speaker at the MSIC 61st annual meeting. That was Tim Barrett, who is the president and CEO of the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston. And so we hope to see you both there. Please share these sessions with your management and your executive staff so they can sign up. And then I will continue to keep you posted about what's ahead in the coming months. And then lastly, we do have our charity golf tournament on Monday, July 10th. We've sent out information about that. So we do hope you'll register and join us at the Hopkinton Golf Club for a fun day and for a great cause. And that's a wrap. Thank you again so much, Jessica and Gracie, for being with us. And thank you everyone for being here today.
Thank you both.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Take care. So.